Ready to
real-well
start the
tragedy.
expedition?
In March
Absolutely.
1997, two
This is
friends,
going to be
Andrew
amazing.
and Attila,
Look at
planned
that
a caving
entrance.
expedition to explore Real Well, a cave in Tennessee with a notorious 160-foot entrance pit. Andrew, who was 32, had more experience, having been on numerous caving trips. Attila, 26, was relatively new to the sport, having only visited 5 caves before, but his enthusiasm was undeniable. As the day of their adventure arrived,
must
the
leave.
weather
I'm
was
freezing to
overcast
death.
with light
We
rain,
have to go.
and as they approached
Okay,
the cave
okay, let's
entrance,
go.
the sound of the waterfall cascading into the pit was louder than expected. Though they had wetsuits in the car, neither thought they'd need them in the cold weather, a decision they would regret later. Despite the intensity of the waterfall, they proceeded, underestimating how cold it would feel and how quickly it would sap their strength. The ropes were rigged in the waterfall's path, and Attila forgot to bring his helmet, a detail he didn't think about in his excitement.
The audio
Their
is dominated by the
anticipation clouded
powerful,
their judgment as
continuous
they began
roar
the
of a
descent.
large waterfall.
Andrew
featuring-
rappelled down first,
Help!
feeling the sting of the cold water as he descended.
Somebody
By the time
help
he
me.
reached the
I'm
bottom,
slipping.
he was already shivering from the chill. Attila followed, but the water made the rope slippery, and his ascent was slow and exhausting. 30 minutes into their exploration, Attila began feeling the effects of the cold, his body shaking uncontrollably. He told Andrew he could not stay any longer and needed to leave. Andrew, too cold to argue, agreed and began preparing the ropes. Attila hurriedly rigged his climbing system, using a commercial seat harness, a shanty chest harness, and a Petzl ascender. The cow's tail was too long, and the shunt, which was meant to act as a backup safety device, only caused more trouble. Attila also connected 6 non-locking carabiners to his harness, an unsafe improvisation that would soon
is
lead
it,
to
the entrance.
complications.
Looks
Andrew
incredible,
noticed the
even
rushed
in the
setup,
rain.
but said nothing
Let's
as
go.
Attila
I can't
began
wait to
climbing.
see inside.
The freezing water made Attila's hands numb, and he struggled with the shunt, which kept slipping and failing to grip the rope. When he was halfway up, the chain of carabiners connecting his ascender to his harness undid itself, leaving him dangling by the cow's tail. Attila could not reach the ascender to adjust it. He tried to call to Andrew, but his words were muffled by the roar of the waterfall. When he shouted that he could not continue, Andrew realized the danger and climbed up toward him, determined to rescue his friend. When Andrew reached Attila, he found him hanging limp, his body almost paralyzed by the cold. Hypothermia had set in, and Andrew knew that only a pick-off maneuver, in which he would attach Attila to his own harness and descend together, could save him. Despite his training, Andrew's fingers were numb, and the freezing conditions made it nearly
going,
impossible
25,
to complete the
26.
maneuver. After several
Clear.
failed
Shock
attempts, he
delivered.
realized
Come
the
on, breathe.
situation was too dire, and he tried another method, climbing out while tied to Attila. However, the added weight was too much, and after only 15 feet,
There,
Andrew's
good as
strength
new.
gave out.
Nothing to worry about.
Now both were stuck, with Attila slipping into
crazy?
unconsciousness,
You can't go
and
down there
Andrew
without
was too
gear.
weak to continue. Desperate, Andrew managed
Help
to
me!
swing over
The
to a
rope
ledge and
snapped!
unclip from the rope. Exhausted, he collapsed, his
Stop!
body shivering
Stop the
from the
ATV!
cold,
You're
and
going
passed
too
out.
close to the edge.
When he
We're gonna
woke up
fall.
hours later, his body was stiff and disoriented. He saw that Attila was still hanging motionless in the waterfall. It was clear that his friend was gone. Realizing that he could do nothing more, Andrew cut the tether that connected them. With great sorrow, he climbed out of the cave alone. Once outside, he collapsed and called for help. Rescue teams arrived and found Attila's body still suspended in the waterfall. A doctor on the scene confirmed what Andrew already knew. Attila had succumbed to
Pull hard, we
hypothermia
need more tension
hours
on line one.
earlier.
Copy
In the
that. Pulling
aftermath,
now.
Andrew reflected on the mistakes
two
they
and
had
three
made,
are secure.
the unsecure
Brett,
carabiners,
Brett.
the rushed decisions, and the oversight of critical safety measures. What began as an exciting adventure had turned into a tragic loss. Culver Creek Cave Tragedy. On the cold afternoon of November 28, 1985, 7 cavers entered Colson Creek Cave in Greenbrier County, West Virginia. Heavy rainfall had caused severe flooding, forcing them to abandon their original plan to explore Friar's Hole. Coulson, though unfamiliar, seemed like a safer option. The cave featured a 5 to 8 foot wide canyon with a shallow, fast-flowing stream over loose rock slabs. Just 50 feet in, they encountered a massive 5-foot-tall boulder partially blocking the passage. They had two choices: climb over it or squeeze through a narrow gap where the stream rushed by. 3 cavers passed safely. Eric Tacey, a 26-year-old experienced caver, led the next group. He chose the left-hand route, stepping carefully through the stream. Just as he reached the center of the boulder, disaster struck. The massive rock shifted. The cavers tried to stop it, but their efforts were futile. The boulder crashed into the narrow corridor, pinning Eric against the cave wall. His left temple and shoulder pressed against the rock. His right cheekbone trapped against the cold stone. His legs dangled beneath him, completely immobilized. The immense weight crushed his chest, making it harder to breathe. Panic set in as his friends desperately tried to help. One rushed out for help, while the others attempted to move the boulder. They pushed with all their strength and used crowbars, but the rock was too heavy. Eric remained conscious for about 30 seconds. Each breath became shallower until his body goes still. A small trickle of blood ran from his left nostril, and his pulse faded. One caver tried to prop him up, but the pressure was relentless. The only sounds left were the distant rush of water and the frantic beating of their hearts. At 4:20 p.m., nearly an hour later, rescuers arrived with a hydraulic jack. Time was running out. With combined efforts, they managed to shift the boulder just enough to free Eric's lifeless body. His friends dragged him to a dry spot and immediately started CPR, hands trembling. Minutes felt like a race against fate. Every chest compression, every desperate breath carried hope, but Eric wasn't responding. His skin turned pale, and though his body was still warm, life was slipping away. Paramedics arrived and took over, working tirelessly for over an hour. At 5:25 p.m., Eric was carried out on a stretcher and rushed to the hospital. Doctors administered IVs and cardiac drugs in a final attempt to save him. Despite all efforts, it was too late. Eric Tacey was pronounced dead, his life stolen by a tragic accident none of his friends could have foreseen. The cave that seemed like a safer option had become his tomb. Alf Cove Pit Tragedy. On September 5, 2013, Brett Smith and his friends set out for a hunting trip in the remote backwoods of New Mexico. The landscape was desolate, vast stretches of dusty rock and occasional patches of forest. They had only basic supplies and a nylon rope for emergencies. Neither was prepared for caving. Then they spotted it, a jagged pit, nearly camouflaged by the rugged terrain. Brett leaned over the edge. The opening was wide, but tapered sharply down into darkness, about 35 feet deep. Locals called it Alf Pit, a dangerous, unmarked sinkhole known among cavers for its deceptive shape and sharp drops. Brett felt drawn to it. Despite having no caving experience or proper gear, he made a reckless decision. He was going in. His friend hesitated, but Brett brushed off his concerns. He tied their nylon rope, a thin, multi-purpose cord not designed for climbing, to a tree and began his descent. As he lowered himself down, the walls closed in. He braced his feet against the rock, maneuvering awkwardly to avoid scraping against the jagged surface. The deeper he went, the tighter the space became. His arms burned with strain as he clung to the rope, feeling gravity's pull with every inch. Then his foot slipped. Loose rocks tumbled below.
Us. Run!
Help! Get it off!
I'm getting out of here.
Their echoes deep and chilling. Brett's breathing quickened. He was too far down. Looking up, he saw how high he was. Panic set in, his muscles cramped, his fingers barely holding on. He shouted to his friend that he was coming back up, but his voice sounded weak above his friend, panicked, searching for a solution. Desperate, he tied the rope to their ATV, hoping to pull Brett up. As the ATV inched forward, Brett felt the rope tighten unnaturally. He shouted for his friend to stop, but it was too late. Snap! The rope gave way. Brett fell nearly 20 feet, his body slamming into the jagged rocks below. Agony exploded through him. His chest burned with every shallow gasp. His limbs ached, refusing to move. Above, his friend stood frozen at the edge. Silence. No movement. No cries. Only the memory of that sickening thud. Desperation gripped him. He dialed emergency services, his hands shaking. Rescuers arrived quickly, lowering ropes and calling Brett's name. The pit offered no response. When they reached the bottom, they found Brett motionless, his body wedged between jagged rocks.
Keep going,
The fall
don't stop
had been
compressions.
catastrophic. His
The
injuries
water
were
level is coming
severe,
up fast.
a cruel
We're losing
testament
time.
to the brutal impact. Despite his struggle, he hadn't made it. Rescuers worked to lift his body, carefully navigating the fragile crevice. Hours later, they emerged.
Stay with us, Eric.
Alf
Don't
Pitt
give up.
stood silent
breathing.
once more, an empty scar in the earth, a reminder
Don't
of
do it, Brett.
recklessness and
Stop.
tragedy.
You can't go
If you
into the
enjoyed this
outfit.
video, subscribe for similar ones, and feel free to drop suggestions for the next video in the comments.